Hello, hello. Thank you for tuning in to the Belly Up Fantasy Live football show. Of course, we are, as you can see, joined by Dave, and it is Kluge, right? That's
You
correct.
got it. Nailed it right in the head.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're joined by the incredible Dave Kluge from Football Guys. Of course, I'm your host, Adam LaRue, Chris Dowhauer to my right. Dave, thank you so much for joining.
Of course. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it. Always down to hop on camera and chop it up, talk a little bit of football. It doesn't get better than that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Again, love to have you on. And let's get straight into it. There's a lot of news brewing now that teams beginning to report to training camp. A bunch of teams started either today or yesterday, continuing throughout the next week or so. We have plenty of news, especially out of the running back department yesterday. There was a bunch popping off. The first thing, and we'll go straight to you, Dave. What do you make of the whole J.K. Dobbins situation? It seemed Rappaport, thought that he had a source on him not being potentially ready for the beginning of the season. Dobbins says, no, I'm going to be ready. I'm 100%. He's planting his flag. He's going to be ready. What did you make of that?
It's a little tough for me to believe. I'm going to side with Ian Rappaport on here just because I know his sources are good. And, it makes sense that J.K. Dobbins, of course, that's the mindset he should have as an NFL player. I'm going to be out there week one. I'm going to be helping my team. I would expect nothing less to come from the mouth of the player himself. But when this injury happened, I mean, the initial reaction that we got from a lot of the people that are in the sports medicine and, injury predictions, which isn't a perfect science. These people do have pretty strong track records. A lot of them put a timetable on there saying 12 to 15 months. And even if he does come back, I'd be shocked to see him at 100% coming off an injury where he basically shredded everything in his knee. So could he be back week one? Maybe, but I'm not going to feel comfortable setting him in my lineup until I see that he's 100% back with that juice that we saw 2 years ago. So I love J.K. Dobbins' response. I love that he just tried to, just completely dunk on Ian Rappaport. I'm not sure if you saw Pat McAfee live on his show, like just going wild about it at the time. It was funny and it made for a really good story. But I'm leaning towards Ian Rappaport's report a little bit here. Happy to see that J.K. Dobbins is ready to get on the field, but I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree there. I would feel uncomfortable, to say the least, starting him week one again without seeing him, play at the level that we saw him play at initially, because he was a monster back when we last saw him his rookie year. One of the most efficient backs there was. Chris, what did you think?
Yeah, and I also think there's some clarification. Ian Rappaport didn't say he was not going to play week one. It seems like he's not going to play week one. There's a chance that he might not, which isn't new news. And I think that's something David's kind of alluded to. That's something that kind of the timetable was pretty put out there beforehand. And there's basically Ian Rappaport was reporting that there's no reason for the Ravens to rush him back. This guy's basically in his third year of his, in his NFL career. There's no reason to kind of jeopardize this guy's future, rush him out there week one. So they kind of ease him in. There might be a chance he starts off, week 4 or 6 down the road, because then you see him get a chance to kind of practice, take a couple of hits, and then see what he's doing after that. So I think this is more no news right here. It's just kind of people kind of puffing their chests out during off season. And as Dave kind of alluded to, I think it's some of these people are trying to find something that's not really there. And I think J.K. Dobbins is trying to show himself as an athlete. I want to be out there. I'm going to be out there. Don't doubt me. But yeah, I think this is something that we all kind of expected.
All right. Our next piece of running back drama was the Leonard Fournette situation. He was reported to have made it to training camp at, 260 pounds. And then it was reported that last year he played at 225. He corrected it and said it was like 235 or something. Regardless, came in a little bit overweight. Some reports the Buccaneers were unhappy about the situation. Chris, we'll go back to you. What did you make of that?
Well, you're very nice, Adam. I didn't hear a little overweight. I heard this guy is kind of a balloon out there, and this is something that's kind of followed around. When Leonard Fournette's not motivated, he's had issues. I mean, this guy was almost out of the league a couple of years ago. So this isn't something that needs to be taken lightly, in my opinion. He's got a 3-year deal. Tampa Bay basically gave him a nice deal for a running back in his age, and I think that this is Tom Brady's kind of gift. Tom Brady can also, turn his back on you in a second if you continue not to do what you need to do. So Fournette kind of keeps saying this is his MO. He'll get back in shape, but the last couple of years he played hungry, and when he's not necessarily really hungry off the field, but on the field. And I think this is a problem right now, that if we're going to see him kind of being lazy Lenny, we don't want to see that.
Dave, I'm curious to hear what you think about the situation. Are you a little cautious about it? And if you are, who are the handcuffs in this situation? Because I feel like this is a backfield where things are getting kind of interesting. Obviously, they brought in Rachaad White, Giovanni Bernard. They already had a young running back who wasn't getting much love. So what do you make of the Buccaneers situation behind the former playoff Lenny?
Well, I think Rachaad White is the handcuff to own at this point. I mean, I was reading that Giovanni Bernard might not even make the week 1 roster. He's probably going to be cut more than anything else. Keyshawn Vaughn, he was everyone's favorite sleeper a couple of years ago, but he didn't do too much last year with his opportunity. So for them to pay up for Rachaad White, I think that he's the backup there. But I'm still just not really too concerned. Chris, you said it. This has kind of been Lenny's MO every single offseason. He shows up out of shape. I feel like we just hear this same story every single year. And I'll be the first to admit it. Once you hit 27 years old, it's a little bit harder to lose those pounds that you put on. But this guy's got nutritionists. He's got top of the line, physical therapists and personal trainers. I think he's just going to be fine. I was really hoping, I do a couple underdog drafts every single day. And I was hoping that, this would bump his ADP down a little bit. And I'd be able to get Leonard Fournette at a discount. And from what I've seen, people aren't really putting too much stock into it. I still see Leonard Fournette consistently going in the middle of the second round. It seems like the public is expecting him to get back in shape before week 1.
Yeah, I think it's likely to be the NFL's version of the James Harden offseason that seems to occur every few years as well. But there is a case to be made that Lenny has had a past of just losing motivation. Now, I think with Tom Brady in the building, it's going to be hard to not to be motivated once it comes season time. I think we'll probably kick it into gear, but have a little bit of concern in the back of mind, maybe, but I'm probably not going to act on said concern at the point in time. Now, another running back, and probably the least dramatic of all of our running back situations that we have here today, is James White. He's struggling in his recovery as well. He was seen, I believe, like limping or, showing some hesitancy walking around on his leg. He obviously had a pretty severe injury after a couple of big PPR games last year. I mean, he was a really nice flex to lower end RB option last year at the beginning of the season. But obviously 30, no longer having Brady, obviously didn't last year either. But the offense changing around him, no more McDaniels, etc. Is this just the time for the other two guys in the Patriots backfield? We moving on from the James White train?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of shocked to see them even bring James White back, 30 years old and coming off a broken hip. I thought that was the end of the road for James White. And part of me wonders if this is just them, doing the right thing for a guy who's been on the team for a long time, been a grinder. I'm not really expecting too much out of James White, especially after we saw Damian Harris have, PFF's highest graded season last year. He looked fantastic as a running back. He had Ramondre Stevenson come up out of nowhere, a 6th, 7th round pick. He had a great season. So they're in really good hands with two young and capable running backs in their backfield. Before James White even showed up to camp, we got reports that Ramondre Stevenson was taking on the passing down work in camp, and that's kind of what I'm expecting is Damian Harris to be the early down and goal line back at that between the tackles rushing ability, and then bring in Ramondre Stevenson for the passing downs. So I'm not too concerned about James White coming in and affecting that backfield at all. I think his presence on the team is more of just a sign of good faith by the Patriots than anything else. I'd be shocked to see James White take on a considerable role this season.
Chris, I know you've always been a big Ramondre Stevenson fan, so I'd take it you probably agree with that assessment.
I mean, I think it could be huge news. If J.J. Taylor is going to kind of be phased out, if Pierre Strong's not going to get his chance to kind of be that guy, I think this is an opportunity for Stevenson to really get, flex potential to be in your last week in, week out, which we saw last year, and even have a nice safe floor. I think this guy shows you can be a threat out of the backfield, but can run the ball as well. So we saw Rex Burkhead had a couple of good years, Jeremy Hill a couple of years before that, where guys are actually utilized in dual roles out of the backfield. The Patriots very rare anymore, but they actually can catch the ball once in a while. So if he actually gets that third down role, I think that's going to be huge. And just real quick, just I kind of think these ties together a little bit with Tampa Bay. I don't think White will be the guy necessarily if Fournette was to flame out. I think they signed a veteran. Maybe James White is that guy towards the end of the season.
Yeah,
I could see James White, and I actually figured that James White would make his way to Tampa, but I could see him being a replacement if they wanted to replace a Giovanni Bernard. Like that would make sense to be that type of back, potentially a little bit better, especially later in the season. As you mentioned, a couple other pieces of news here. Kirk Cousins has been in the news for a plethora of things, but one of them being that it is believed that Mike Zimmer, or alleged that Mike Zimmer, not a big fan of the Kirk. So, maybe we could see the rise of Kirk Cousins this coming season. Kluge, I see the Bears helmet back there. No, you wouldn't love that, but what's your honest take there?
I think Kirk Cousins probably wasn't a huge fan of Mike Zimmer. I mean, they clearly didn't have anything going together. I mean, all the reports that I'm getting out of Minnesota and friends that I've talked to up there, it seems like Kevin O'Connell is just injecting, something explosive into this offense, which Mike Zimmer just held them back for years. So I'm pretty excited to see what these new look Vikings are going to look like in 2022.
Yeah, I agree. Chris, what do you think the biggest difference as far as how this offense operates on a game-to-game basis going to be now that we're looking at the Kevin O'Connell system? I know a lot of the biggest reports have been maybe Cook receiving a lot more out of the backfield.
I think pace. I think pace is going to be the huge thing. Pace gets you points, and then more yardage, more points you get for fantasy. So we want to see that ball, in the offense's hands as many plays as you possibly get out there. Kevin O'Connell and that Rams offense was definitely a high-paced offense. You're going to see lots of misdirection. So you talked about Dalvin Cook being a weapon on the backfield. But I think you're going to see, them attack you multiple layers. They've done kind of decent job over the last few years, but it became kind of a dink or dunk offense, whereas take deep shots, maybe throw 5-yard passes. I think you're going to see some more of the medium throws, some intermediate throws, which Kirk Cousins throws pretty well. So I think you put all those things together, this offense can really be unleashed. And that defense isn't really upgraded significantly. So while it's been trying to hide the defense in a sense and play offense to kind of balance that, I think you're going to see the opposite, where the offense is going to try to put up as many points as they can, and hey, defense, do what you can do to keep us around.
I think a lot of 3 wide receiver sets too. I mean, the Rams in back-to-back years have led the league in 3 wide receiver sets. So, getting off on a little bit of a tangent here, but KJ Osborne's season might finally be here this year.
Yeah, I mean, he played pretty well when he was able to get on the field last year. So, could be an interesting player to keep an eye on throughout the offseason.
Just real interesting quick, though. If Minnesota goes 6-10 or 6-11 this year, is Mike Zimmer going to still be the punching bag? Because he's taking a lot of punches right now. Like he was the whole problem in Minnesota the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It would be very interesting. Our last piece of news, and that's a little bit on the later end, but still something that I wanted to talk about since we haven't been on air for it. Dave, I'm sure you have. I know you have because you were on earlier today. The Trey Lance situation with the arm fatigue and, Ayuk's response and all of that. I assume we're collectively not putting much stock into that. And I know I'm personally, at least as relative to where he's going anyways, wasn't the biggest fan, but the arm fatigue has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of hearing some mixed things about this, but I thought that the coach's response, I've never heard of arm fatigue in my life. I think he oversold it a little bit, and I think that there might actually be a little bit of an issue here that they're just trying not to let on to. But I mean, San Francisco, this has just been like year after year after year. The beat has no clue. Like the beat reporters don't know what's happening in that front office. I do agree with that. I mean, it's a mess trying to get any like real information out of the San Francisco 49ers. So it could be an issue. It could not be. I'm not going to, go too crazy with my take on this, but I expect Jimmy Garoppolo to still be there week 1. I don't even know if Lance has that job security for the entire season. Just looking at what Jimmy Garoppolo has done, he has been tied to Kyle Shanahan since Kyle Shanahan's first year as a head coach. And they have won when Jimmy Garoppolo's on the field, and they've lost when Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't been on the field. So I don't think that, it's going to be Jimmy Garoppolo's week 1 job, but kind of looking through the schedule, it's very easy that the 49ers could start off 1-3, 1-4, get off to a pretty bumpy start. And I think that Kyle Shanahan might be pretty quick to throw Jimmy out there if he's still on contract or still on the team. So we don't have to get, too deep into this, but there's a lot of question marks in San Francisco that I think people are just blindly ignoring.
Dave, that is a very popular opinion on this show, but it's not popular overall. So I actually am very happy to hear you say some of those things. Yes, but for me personally, don't think the arm fatigue has much to do with the overarching, like you said, blindly kind of going into things with them. But let's go get a quick word from from our good friend Dan Mater and our sponsor Manscaped. We'll be back in a second. We'll get into today's segment.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Got bush? You definitely do if you haven't tried the best products from our sponsor today, Manscaped. Taking control of your bush is important. These products are so good, you're going to be showing pride in your new bush-free yard. It's a fact that you will have the best-kept nutsack on the cul-de-sac. Save big and be the most hygienic version of yourself by using the discount code BELLYUPFANTASY for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Whether you're looking to go bald like an eagle or just in need of a safe trim, Manscaped is dedicated to helping you level up your full body grooming game. The grooming package I highly recommend is the Performance Package 4.0. Inside this package is the Lawnmower 4.0. This electric trimmer is a bush worst nightmare. With a Performance Package purchase, you get 2 free gifts, the Shed Travel Bag and the patented high-performance reduced chafing Manscaped Boxers. They have a bunch of other products on their website, too, to help you maximize your confidence and grooming game. So that's 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at manscaped.com. It's time to level up your game from the Amazon to the Amadong with the ultimate bushwhacking tools from Manscaped. So one more time, that's 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at manscaped.com today. Hey.
We are back with the Belly Up Fantasy Live football show and our guest, Dave Kluge. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to get into I Betcha. It's our segment for today. We are planting our flag on a few takes today. So it's going to be really fun. And we're going to start with the Packers wide receiver room, one of the most debated things really recently. Dave, I know you put out an article recently on Aaron Rodgers not being fazed by the moves at the skill positions for the Green Bay Packers. I tend to agree with that, or at least it not being that big of a deal. We're going to talk about specifically which wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers is going to lead this team in fantasy points this year between Lazard, Cobb, one of the rookies in Dobbs or Watson, or someone else. And Dave, we're going to go right to you.
Yeah, how much time do I have? Can I just take the mic for the next 15 minutes here? I mean, Alan Lazard is my guy, man. I've been beating the drum for this dude since he came into the league, and he finally got his opportunity. I came out with an article just a couple of days after Davante Adams was traded, and I said the path to a breakout for Alan Lazard is huge right here. And it's really tough to paint a picture for an Alan Lazard breakout because fantasy football revolves around numbers. And this is a guy who just had his first 500-yard season. He has never commanded more than a 15% target share. I mean, there's a lot of red flags for him, but you got to look past the numbers when you're dealing with the Green Bay Packers. You already pointed out the Bears helmet that I got back here. So I've gotten a firsthand look at Aaron Rodgers for, the majority of my adult lifehood. And, this guy, he's just said best by Green Bay's president. He is a complicated fella. And we see this, throughout his entire career where he just really slowly grooms his receivers to become the wide receiver one. Davante Adams didn't have his first 1,000-yard season until year 4. Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, all of these guys got off to really slow starts. And I think that when you just look at it schematically, Alan Lazard is the only guy that really fits into that X role that was vacated by Davante Adams. So you look at all of these different pieces and how they're going to fit into the offense. Christian Watson, phenomenal athlete. But really, I mean, he's just an upgrade from MBS and what they lost in MBS. He's a great straight line runner, can't really adjust to the ball in the air all that well, doesn't have the best hands. I mean, he is a carbon copy of MBS, and he's going to play that flanker role opposite side of the X. When you look at Randall Cobb at his age, he's going to fit into the slot. He can't play the X receiver role right now. He's going to be splitting some of that time with Aaron Jones, I presume. And that leaves the X role, which is the primary read in Matt LaFleur's offense, and that is going to go to Alan Lazard. So Alan Lazard is 6'5". He's got hands that are just like a bear trap. I mean, he catches everything that comes his way, and he doesn't have the ability to win one-on-one against press coverage against some of the top corners in the league. But LaFleur is so creative in getting his players open in space. And we have one game in the last 2 years where MVS was healthy and Alan Lazard was healthy. And I think this is kind of an indication of what they'll do in life after Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams obviously missed this game. It was against the New Orleans Saints, and in that game, Allen Lazard was drawing coverage from Marshawn Lattimore. So what you saw was a lot of pre-snap motion to get him off of Lattimore, and he ended up having a phenomenal game. He pulled in 8 targets. He had 6 catches, 146 yards, and a touchdown. And I don't think that he's going to be putting up that type of production every single year. But at the end of the season, I think that he's going to be somewhere between 120 and 130 targets. And if you're getting 120 or 130 targets from Aaron Rodgers, it is pretty easy to finish as a wide receiver 1. So I came out with this article back in March. And at the time, I said that, Allen Lazard should be getting drafted as a top 36 receiver. And I said I expect them to draft 2 rookies in the first round, 2 rookie wide receivers. Well, they didn't draft a single wide receiver. I thought that they were going to go out and get Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, one of these guys that was asking for a trade, and they brought in Sammy Watkins. So since that article came out, Allen Lazard's situation has only improved. I've got him right now as my wide receiver 22. I'm putting all my chips in on Allen Lazard to be the guy in Green Bay this year.
Okay, Chris, what do you have to say about that?
I think Dave hit the nails right in the head. I mean, I think he's preaching to the choir on this one. I totally agree with you. I think Allen Lazard has the most important thing you could have as Aaron Rodgers' trust. And if Aaron Rodgers trusts you, he's going to throw the ball to you. And that's all you need as a receiver. I think you saw Devontae Adams kind of, be that guy. But you see, when Aaron Rodgers wants to get you the ball, he'll figure out different ways, as you kind of alluded to that New Orleans, even though it was a lot of schematics, I think it's also Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to get the ball to this guy. So those things, I think, add up well for Allen Lazard. I think he's going to have a great floor. I think he's going to be very consistent this year. I don't think he's necessarily a receiver 1. Top 36, I think that's definitely going to be discussed. My only guy to throw in the caveat I will throw in there is if, and this has been an if for about 3, 4, 5, 6 years now, if Sammy Watkins is healthy, he fits that offense also really well. There's a lot of things that Devontae Adams does with after the ball in his hands, also the big play. So I think they complement each other well. So I think Allen Lazard would be my guy I'd bet on. But if I was going to put, a shilling on something extra, Sammy Watkins might be a guy that I might be keep my eye on.
The nice thing is you can get both. You can draft Allen Lazard in the 8th round and then get Sammy Lazard in the 16th and just hedge your bet a little bit for not much at all.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah. I think I will also plant my flag on the Lazard train. And my only caveat will be that I do really love Dobbs in Dynasty. Like as a flyer late, I really like the kid. I think he's a good talent. But redraft Lazard is the only one that I'm touching. Moving on, though, our next group will be the other highly spoken about wide receiver room in the league, where we now have MVS, we now have Juju, we now have another rookie in Sky Moore. We have Mecole still, a handful of other players. Chris?
Josh Gordon?
Yeah, yeah. Technically, Chris, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I this is one of the hardest ones for me because I look at Juju Smith-Schuster and I can't believe this guy's 25 years old. The decline I've seen on tape, I know Ben gets a lot of that blame, but the guy was averaging like 7 yards a catch. I think you can do that like in your sleep. I think it's almost impossible to do as a receiver in the NFL. So I really have a lot of questions whether Juju can kind of get it going. He has the money invested in him. But the fit that kind of makes the most sense to me of all the different guys, and I know he's had his inconsistency, is MVS. I think Hardman is a little bit too much like MVS, but he doesn't really bring the 6'4" wingspan, doesn't bring that red zone target, doesn't bring some of the extra stuff that MVS can kind of do. And I think when you look at what Andy Reid does well, he schemes up the big play well. So I think this is something that you're going to see a guy that gets kind of his shots and putting balls in his wheelhouse, has an opportunity in the red zone. So I'm going to go with MVS. I'm not super, super confident about it, but that's who I'd bet on today.
All right, Dave, what are you thinking?
I'm kind of in the same boat as Chris, where I don't have any confidence in this at all. And if you look at how these players are getting drafted, it's like Juju, MVS, and Sky Moore are all getting drafted within a couple rounds of each other, which makes me think that most fantasy managers don't have a lot of confidence in this. Everyone's just kind of punting the wide receiver 1 down the board and then taking wide receiver 1, 2, and 3 all relatively close to each other. So if you had to ask who I think leads the team in targets, I'd probably put my money on Juju. But like you said, I mean, he has just been falling off the last couple of years. Jetpack Galileo, who does a fantastic job cutting up some film clips. I don't know if you saw what he posted today, but it was a video where there was an interception thrown that was returned for a touchdown, and Juju Smith-Schuster putting up no effort at all. Like, the ball was just put on the money to Juju. Rather than getting two hands out there, he put one hand up there, tipped it up in the air, went right to a defender, and then he didn't even attempt to make the tackle. He just ran out of bounds and let this guy take it back for a touchdown. I mean, it's weird to see how hard this guy has fallen off. We are 3 years removed from Juju Smith-Schuster being the dynasty wide receiver 1, and now he lands in an ideal situation with Patrick Mahomes, and he's almost like kryptonite for me. I mean, it's incredible to fall off that hard at 25 years old. So, like I said, if I had to put my money on somebody, it would be on Juju, because I think that he's going to operate out of the slot and draw a decent amount of targets there. But if we're looking at cost and who I think has the highest ceiling, the guy that I find myself drafting the most, it's Sky Moore. This guy was just a compiler in college. He's got a lot of, just wild athleticism that really pops off the screen. And more than anything, he's got effort. He's still on a rookie contract. It's his first year in the league. He's going to be hungry. And I just don't know if we're going to see that from Juju. So I don't have a lot of confidence in this one at all, but I find myself drafting more and more Sky Moore.
I think I probably lean in that same direction, just in that I would bet on Juju, but I don't have any really interest in drafting him. I don't think the gap exists, really. Like, if I have to put in one name, probably Juju. But I don't know. I'll take the cheapest one, which I believe as of right this second.
Moore.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go with him. He's going to be the one that I actually actively have on rosters, just because I think if anyone gets that Andy Reid treatment where he does get, he gets active in his coaching, sometimes he gets a little lazy and stops moving people around. But when he is moving a play around, I think it will likely be him, and that's a really impactful role in that offense. I think he has the highest upside.
He feels like a guy that you're going to draft as like wide receiver 28, and he's going to finish at wide receiver 28. Like, he's not going to give you anything. Like, I just feel like there isn't much of a ceiling there. I feel like he's going to have a reasonable floor, but he's not going to be on a lot of winning rosters. He feels like he's just going to live right up to his ADP.
Yeah, I have to agree with that sentiment.
I think it's going to be really hard, though, because when we look at the Chiefs, I think Travis Kelsey will be the guy.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes is going to throw 5,000 yards probably around there, so somebody's catching that ball and going to. We saw Byron Pringle have some nice weeks last year when Hill was kind of struggling. So that's an offense. It's really, and the Green Bay offense as well. It's like, these are receiver questions you really want to try to kind of figure out, because, man, if you get it right, big.
Yeah, you are certainly not wrong there. I actually really like this next question. It's an interesting one. Thielen of the Vikings, will he have a better season than all of the players we've listed previously? So all of the Packers or Chiefs wide receivers, Thielen versus any of them. And I think I would personally lean Thielen on a per game basis. I'm willing to accept that I will miss 4 or 5 weeks, but I will be happy that I have Thielen in the games that he is healthy. Dave, you can go.
I'm going with Lazard. I mean, just based off my rankings, I've got him ranked a little bit higher. And I get it. Like, Thielen is the preferred red zone target for Kirk Cousins. Well, guess what? Allen Lazard is going to be the preferred red zone target for Aaron Rodgers on what is going to be an equally explosive offense. So, I'm going to take Lazard out of all of those guys and Thielen.
And Chris?
Yeah, Dave really convinced me that the Allen Lazard debate.
It was a great sell.
It's a really good sell, but I'm going to go with Adam Thielen. This is my thing where I think Adam Thielen's going to have kind of that bounce back season. People kind of written him off. He had nice touchdown production the last 2 years. That shouldn't go anywhere with his offense. You've seen that second receiver in his Rams offense be extremely productive, whether it's Robert Woods, even OBJ last year towards the end of the season. Like, we're excited about Allen Robinson. The offensive pace, the division, put all those different things together. I think Adam Thielen winds up having the best, and as Adam alluded, he might miss a couple of games here or there, but as per game, the guy that I want in my lineup, I think Adam Thielen. I love Allen Lazard. I think he's got a lot of potential, but I love Tom Brady and a lot of receivers after the, Randy Moss moved on, Wes Walker moved on, Julian Edelman moved on. The receivers weren't the same production-wise, so I do think it does matter who you have out there, and I do think it's going to still be Adam Thielen's going to he fits the best.
We've been talking about the Chiefs and Packers a lot. We're going to do it one more time here for the big one, Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill, the exiting receivers. Which of the two performs the best this season in fantasy. Chris, what do you got?
Can I get a tie? No. A lot of people are down on the Tyreek Hill. They talked about last season, his decline. I love Tyreek Hill. I love the fit, but Davante Adams is a monster. Already has the chemistry with Derek Carr from college. Wanted to be in Oakland. Wanted to be in Las Vegas. I think this offense is going to be predicated to getting him the ball. Josh McDaniels can be creative when he wants to be. It had had one of the better offenses I talked about with Tom Brady, had Randy Moss. So we put all those things together with the different weapons they have. You can't really double Adams in his offense either. I think Adams is going to be the guy.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. There's just less mouths to feed in Las Vegas, and I just have more faith in Derek Carr and Josh McDaniels than I do in Tua Tagovailoa and Mike McDaniel. They're both phenomenal talents, really special players, but I think that you can basically just pencil Davante Adams in for 160 targets with how much money they gave him and the history with Derek Carr. Hill, I think that he's going to have some huge games, and I really like him as a value. But at the end of the day, he and Jalen Waddle have very similar skill sets. It's going to be pretty tough to keep both of them involved while still leaning on what we expect to be a run-first offense. And then, obviously, I think that we're going to see a little bit of a role change from Tyreek Hill compared to what we saw in Kansas City. A lot more jet sweeps and some screens trying to mask the, inefficiencies of Tua Tagovailoa. But at the end of the day, you lose a lot when you're not catching 65-yard bombs from Patrick Mahomes. So it's going to be tough for Tyreek Hill to live up to that.
Yeah, I think we have a three-way agreement here. Like you said, I trust Derek Carr a lot more than I trust Tua at this point in time, especially with the new regime here. Having all the weapons they do, but Davante still being the clear guy, I think is really valuable, and also them being complementing weapons. I think Renfro, operating completely underneath doesn't really take much away. Having a good tight end in Waller that can attack the seams, I don't think that these things take a ton away from what Davante Adams can do out there on the outside. So yeah, I think I'm with you. I'll take the Fresno State guys to the bank. We are going to move over to the tight end position. We're going back to Green Bay one last time, I hope. We actually
I was trying to keep the theme together. Sorry.
Oh, good. We have Tanyan, DeGuara, or Davis, who is the tight end in Green Bay. And this is interesting because it's a tight end is a position where if you can kind of get one of those guys that can sneaky get in there, especially what Tanyan did a few years ago. I know it's become a joke because of how hard it is to replicate that, but you can get pretty lucky at the tight end position, and that can help you genuinely win your league. If you have a super strong roster elsewhere and just get lucky at the tight end position, or take a couple shots on some high upside guys in this situation. I will say I'm personally not that interested in any of these guys, but I do think it'll be Tanyan. As far as DeGuara goes, personally, I'm not that interested in a 6'2" tight end.
Yeah, and I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't really want any of these guys. I mean, DeGuara was basically playing fullback more than he was playing tight end prior to Tanyan going down last year. But really, I mean, when you look at it historically, Aaron Rodgers just doesn't really like tight ends all that much. I mean, Jimmy Graham had 75 targets per season when he was in Green Bay, and he was, on decline a little bit. But really, the only guy that we've ever seen consistently putting out decent production from the tight end slot with Aaron Rodgers was Jermichael Finley. And that was, he was in his early 20s. He was a freak athlete. And even that, over his best 2 years, he was averaging 700 yards and 5 touchdowns per season. So, I mean, there just really isn't too much to get excited about here. All the guys that are on the roster now aren't half the player that Jermichael Finley was. The most likely scenario is that Tanyan, leads all these tight ends in targets, but it's probably going to be 50 or 60 targets, maybe a handful of touchdowns, but there's no way that he's going to replicate what he did in 2020. So I think that all of these guys, at least for fantasy purposes, shouldn't even be on your radar.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Unless you're in a 2 tight end league, then maybe.
Well, I think it's interesting, though, because I do think that, we talked about if Aaron Rodgers is going to fall off, then they're still going to, like we talked about the Chiefs offense, who's going to get this yardage? So we have, you talked about Aaron Rodgers not necessarily using tight end, but they do see them a lot of red zone targets over the years, depending on who that kind of was. It varies, but there has been a lot of guys utilize that, whether it's Tanyan, whether it was Graham, whether it was Finley. Excuse me. They also don't have Devontae Adams either more to kind of utilize that in the red zone and eat all those targets either. So I am kind of curious to see if somebody steps up. Tanyan hasn't been healthy. There's still kind of curiosity. Will he actually be 100% healthy to start the season? There's a lot of talk about Davis being that guy that kind of like how he's taking a next step. His usage, Deguara, I kind of agree with you guys. I didn't like him much in college. I think he's just a guy. But I do hear a lot of the talk about playing a lot of 2 tight ends in Green Bay. We saw the Rams offense kind of convert when they had to use Higbee and Everett a little bit more. Higbee had that great run for a couple of years ago. So I do think there is some production that can be there. It's just kind of guessing who that guy is. And if I were to guess today, I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going to go with Davis.
Okay. That's the biggest stray, I think, that we've had from the consensus here, at least as far as from the trio.
Don't draft anybody, though. I'm with Dave.
Yeah. Dan comes in with in the comments with Deguara week 1. So who knows?
Here we go. So I like it.
Okay.
It's not Tremble, though.
Yeah, not Tremble. Our next group here is the Indianapolis tight end group. That's my team. I don't have the helmet behind me, so I had to shout that out. But so I can go ahead here. Mo Alley-Cox, our lovely rookie, and Jelani Woods and Kylan Granson. And I'm going to say that we can kind of keep this one moving because it's going to continue to be a tight end committee, more or less, as it's kind of been. I would say Mo Alley-Cox will lead technically, quote unquote. What I think you'll see is he gets a lot of the yardage. I think you'll see Woods kind of block most of the time, but I think you will see him come out as a receiver in the red zone. I think Kylan Granson, they'll probably scheme some things up where they can move him as kind of a big slot sometimes. But I don't think any of them, realistically, I'd be surprised if any of them broke 400 yards.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, if I'm throwing a dart on any of these guys, it's Mo Alley-Cox, especially in best ball, just for the touchdown upside. That's what you're hoping for if you're drafting a late round tight end in best ball, is that they're going to stumble into the end zone every once in a while. And I think that Mo Alley-Cox, I'm not projecting it, but would it surprise anybody if the season ends and somehow Mo Alley-Cox has 10, 12 touchdowns? No, I don't think so. So, I mean, he's the guy that I'm betting on, but typically when I'm targeting tight ends in fantasy, I want guys that I think are going to have heavy target shares and a lot of volume. And I don't see that with any of these guys. So really you're just hoping for touchdowns. And I think Mo Alley-Cox is most likely to end up there.
Yeah. Chris, anything?
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I think the key thing about tight ends, once you get out of those top couple of guys, all you're really looking for is touchdowns for most of these guys anyway. So it's kind of figuring out who those guys are to rely on. There's a lot of talk about Matt Ryan. That's where I find it kind of interesting because Matt Ryan has fed the tight end position except for last year in the red zone, but usually feeds the tight end position. Tony Gonzalez ate for a long time off of him. They had their Austin Hooper guy's contract off of Atlanta and his usage in Matt Ryan. So Matt Ryan will look for that position. A lot of talk about the running backs, but the tight end usually gets utilized. Frank Reich can scheme him up, but to Adam's point, and as the our Colts guy here, Frank Reich screws it all up playing those 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tight ends he has to have on the roster for some reason. And therefore, I go with Mo Alley-Cox, but I don't think it's going to matter because week 1, it'll be one guy. Week 2, it'll be somebody else. Week 3, it'll be somebody else. And you'll never be able to figure it out.
Yeah. I actually really liked you throwing in this one because I think I'm going to lean this guy, but we'll hear it from you two first. I think I've gone first twice in a row. Evan Ingram versus those previous that we've spoken about, like we did with Thielen. So Evan Ingram versus the tight ends on the Green Bay Packers and on the Colts. Who does better? Chris, what's up?
I'm going Evan Ingram. I know a lot of people still had a Dan Arnold love. I'm over Dan Arnold, been over Dan Arnold. I think that Evan Ingram has the talent. Trevor Lawrence can look for a guy that you can actually see in the red zone. And I think that you put those things together, have a better chance. And also the coaching staff. I like what we saw Doug Peterson do when he was in the Eagles, utilizing tight end position. That's been kind of his MO. So I think that can continue with his offense. I don't love the receiver signings. Christian Kirk will be decent, but other than that, who do you like in his offense? I think Evan Ingram can step up. So I'd rather have him over the other tight end positions.
All right, Dave, what are your thoughts?
That's exactly where I'm at. I mean, I just kind of showed my hand on the last question, but we were talking about, tight ends. And I said that if I'm drafting a tight end in the late rounds, I'm looking for guys that I think that are going to have a lot of volume and a lot of targets. And And like Chris said, I mean, Doug Peterson utilizes that over his last 3 years as a head coach. He was top 2 in 2 tight end sets every single season. I mean, that's just what he does. And one of the first things he did when he showed up into Jacksonville, or one of the first things the Jaguars did when he showed up in Jacksonville, was go out and sign Evan Ingram. And you got to think that was very intentional. And I like Dan Arnold too, as like a really late, if you're in a league that has, 23, 24, 25 rounds, throw a late round dart at Dan Arnold, because I like him as well. But I think that there is a better chance that Evan Ingram leads the Jaguars in targets than there is that any tight end in Green Bay or Indianapolis outscores Evan Ingram.
I would probably lean that way as well. Someone's got to break out as the receiver for the Jaguars. Going to be interesting to see how that situation plays out. And now we're getting into more of the premier conversations, and this is one that I find really interesting. Dave, we're going to go you here. Kelsey versus Andrews.
Yeah, this one's pretty easy for me. I am a Kelsey guy, and I get it. Andrews is younger. He had a fantastic season, but the splits without Lamar Jackson really concerned me. And I'm sure you guys have seen those by now. I'm not going to beat it, but he averaged almost twice as many points per game without Lamar Jackson than he did with him. And it makes sense. Lamar Jackson is, I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with this, but I think that he's a very good passer, and he's good at spreading the ball around. And then once they get into the red zone, especially near the goal line, he's going to run the ball. And when Lamar wasn't playing, Andrews saw a huge bump in usage, and he became the team's preferred red zone target. So now with Lamar Jackson expected to be back and healthy this year, I'm just a tad lower on Andrews. And then just looking at the situation in Kansas City, without Tyreek Hill there, without any clear-cut wide receiver one, Kelsey could see 160, 170 targets in this offense, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit. So I like Andrews as a football player, but he's actually my tight end 3 this year. I'm a little bit below consensus on him.
Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you on Dave. I think people have been trying to write Travis Kelsey off way too fast. They've been trying to anoint somebody else as the next big guy. This guy's been the guy. He's going to continue to be the guy. I see no reason that changes. My only concern that he wouldn't be the top dog out of these two would be that if they kind of try to do what they did last year, at the beginning of the season, they tried to rest him in a sense to prepare from the postseason. They want to keep him fresh. If they try to get cute with that, maybe you might see a little, down take on his usage. But overall, I think this offense can't get cute. They're going to need him week in, week out. And this is going to be the guy that, Patrick Mahomes' best friend, they were roommates a couple of years ago. So I think this will continue to be the thing. I love Andrews. I think he's a stud. I love, Dave's point about him and Lamar. I think they have a connection, whether it's him or not. But you have other mouths to feed. There's too many other things that get involved in the Ravens offense that I'm still kind of worried about. And I think that they were very more pass-oriented last year because they had to be. The defense was pathetic last year. So that's going to kind of change this year. And I think you put all those things back together, looking at divisions, look at that AFC West, it's going to be stacked. You're going to score points. So Travis Kelsey, to me, is the guy that's going to still be that stud.
Yeah, I just pulled this up here. With Lamar Jackson, he saw 5.8 targets per game, and without, he saw 8.3. So, I mean, he saw it's almost a 50% boost in targets. And if he's still pulling 5.3 targets per game without Lamar or with Lamar Jackson, it's going to be really tough to pass up the opportunity that Travis Kelsey is going to be getting with Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, like you said, they're not going to have an opportunity to rest Kelsey like they were trying to a little bit last year, because this is a division where the Chiefs are, to me, they feel like the betting favorite, but I don't know that I wouldn't be that shocked if they somehow missed out. I wouldn't bet on it, but I wouldn't be that shocked if they missed out. So this is a division where they're going to have to actively be trying to win every single week, because it's going to be very tight. Every team is a genuine playoff contender, and any of the 4 teams could very realistically be left out. And again, the Chiefs are probably the favorite to win the division. I'm not going to deny them that. Just saying it wouldn't be that big of a shock if they were to be the team that missed out. So Kelsey has to be used because he's going to be their best receiver. When we talked about earlier, those other receivers, maybe they do all suck. We just Kelsey just has one of his best seasons, which is a pretty high bar. But certainly in the cards, at least in my opinion. We're going to go at 2 younger tight ends. And I think this is an interesting one, a very, very interesting one, in Hawkinson versus Fryermuth. Chris, I feel like you have a hot take here. So what is it?
I don't know if it's a hot take, but I'm not as big on Hawkinson as a lot of people seem to be. The guy didn't have 100 yards at all in the entire season last year. His highest just wasn't a guy that I think is going to necessarily jump even higher now they have more weapons to feed and more mouths to feed in Detroit. On the flip side, Fryermuth is gotten anything better at quarterback is upgraded Ben. I'm sorry, I'm not a Trubisky fan, I'm not a Randolph fan, I'm not a Pickett fan, but Ben was terrible last year. And I think Fryermuth in the offense will be able to be more chance to score touchdowns. And as a result, you already saw him kind of where he falls in the food chain when it comes after Deontay Johnson and where he falls as the offensive pass catcher. I think that continues to become the case. They have a good running back. That team's going to probably be a lot of play action, a lot of playing physical football more than likely out there a lot. So the tight end will be utilized a lot. So I look at Fryermuth as the guy. Hawkinson continues to get a lot of talk. I see there's no reason to continue to kind of buy that train. I think last year was the year you were going to try to hope that hit. And to me, it really didn't. And I think that's why you get off it now and going for Muth this year.
Dave, what are your thoughts?
It's really tough to write off a rookie coming off a season like Fryermuth had, but I just get a little bit concerned with the usage. I mean, he saw 4.9 targets per game, and it was pretty steady throughout the season. It's not like he saw those targets really growing or a booming opportunity. And just looking at like who led in targets last year, guys like James O'Shaughnessy and Tyler Conklin and Jared Cook had more targets per game than Pat Fryermuth did last year. And I don't like TJ Hawkinson either. I mean, you talked about how he didn't have a 100-yard game last year. I could be mistaken, but I think the only 100-yard game TJ Hawkinson has ever had was his first game ever. Like he was drafted 8th overall. He showed up with 100-something yards week 1. Everybody thought that he was the next big thing, and he hasn't really done much since. So I don't like the Steelers offense. I don't like the Lions offense. I'm not especially crazy about TJ Hawkinson or Pat Fryermuth, but if I had to pick one of the two, I'd be leaning ever so slightly to TJ Hawkinson, just because I think that he has a better chance of being the team's number 2 passing option. Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, George Pickens, all in Pittsburgh. I think it's going to be tough for Fryermuth to pull a meaningful target share. And his production last season was really propped up by that touchdown rate. And I just don't know if those touchdowns are going to be coming this year with Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett under center. I'm much higher on the Detroit Lions than a lot of other people are. I think that they're going to surprise a lot of people and have a pretty good offense. I mean, you can poke fun at Jared Goff all you want, but this guy's just a few years removed from a Super Bowl loss to Tom Brady. And now he is surrounded with a fantastic offensive line, playmakers everywhere on the field. I think that the Lions could be a shocking offense this year and be a lot better than people expect. So, I'm just looking at what I project to be a better offense and somebody that I expect to get a little bit more targets. So I'm going to lean towards Fryermuth here, but I'm going to lean towards Hawkinson, but it wouldn't surprise me if one bit if Fryermuth does outscore him.
I agree with most of your points, and I actually reasoning's pretty sound. I'm going to also lean, but the other direction, towards Fryermuth. I struggled to see any of the quarterbacks on the Steelers offense really just be able to get the ball to the outside, which is why I feel comfortable saying that I think Fryermuth has a good shot at being that second option, just because I have very little faith into them being able to get the ball to a Claypool or get the ball down the field to a Pickens, who are both players that I like. I just think the quarterbacks are going to be very restricted, kind of similar to Ben, to throwing to their tight ends, throwing to their slot. That's why I feel very comfortable in continuing to draft Deontay at value a lot, because I think that those guys who are going to be underneath, those guys who are going to be on the seam in the middle, I think they're going to get fed. I don't think that we're going to see the ball make it to the outside very much at all.
Yeah, I agree. And Fryermuth, I mean, he's a fantastic athlete. I think he's got more upside. But, just looking at projection and how many targets I'm expecting these guys to get, that's why I'm leaning towards Hawkinson. But, I think you make a good point, especially with where they operate on the field. And, I think that the ceiling for Fryermuth is undeniably higher.
All right, so that was the last ones that we had in the script. But there's one more tight end situation that I want to talk about, or a comparison at least, that I want to throw out there. And that is 2 other tight ends on the move. And those are Hayden Hurst and Austin Hooper of the Titans and Bengals, respectively. These are both some that I find fascinating because at times throughout their careers, they have had some fantasy relevance, especially Hooper in Atlanta back in the day. And this is a situation that has had some on their team that has had some tight end relevancy as well. What do you make of these matchups, Dave?
I mean, we saw Azuma have some huge boom games last year in Cincinnati, but at the end of the day, Hayden Hurst is probably going to be 4th or 5th on this team in targets, which makes it tough. And Hooper, I mean, it's tough for me to get behind Hooper just because last year there was so much hype around Anthony Firkser in the offseason, and he was just non-existent in that Titans offense. So I understand that a case can be made for Hooper, but the Titans are a team that I just really struggle to figure out what they're going to look like. Is Traylon Burks going to be the next AJ Brown, or is he going to be the next Darrell Green Beckham? I mean, his range of outcomes is so wide. And then you got Robert Woods, 30 years old, coming off the ACL tear. You don't know if he's going to bounce back. Is he going to be the team's wide receiver 1, or is he just going to kind of be a veteran in the locker room that helps some of these younger guys out? Nick Westbrook-Akine, at the end of the season, he showed up with some really big games, but how's he going to operate as the team's wide receiver 1? It's so tough for me to try to project out what I think this Titans offense is going to look like. We know what we're getting with Cincinnati, a team that's probably going to throw for 40 or 45 touchdowns this year. They're going to be putting up a ton of points. So because of that, I'd probably lean towards Hayden Hurst just because I expect him to have some boom games like we saw from Uzama last season.
Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Dave. I think Hayden Hurst is the guy that I'd probably prefer to have. He's all the boom games at Uzma. But you also see a better fit, I think, especially in the red zone. Cincinnati's going to be a team that's going to have to kind of use tight end to help pass protect. Their offensive line has improved a little bit, but it's still going to have some issues. I think Hayden Hurst is going to see the field quite often. They're going to be out there for a lot of different red zone situations, different personnel packages, and I think he's going to have a little decent floor as a result of that. On the flip side, I have no idea what that offense is going to do. And I wouldn't the running back situation either. I mean, Henry, we didn't play Henry last year either. So we put all those things. And the biggest part for me is Arthur Smith's no longer in Tennessee. Todd Downing is offensive coordinator there. I'm not a Todd Downing fan. I don't trust him to get anybody the ball. He could get Julio the ball, could get A.J. Brown the whole ball. So I do get hand the ball to Derrick Henry. That's all I know he can do. So until I see otherwise, I'm not touching a tight end or any other receiver on the Tennessee Titans.
Interesting. I think I do lean towards Hurst, but I think it's pretty close. I mean, I do think that kind of what you guys are saying, the situation in Tennessee is so volatile right now that it doesn't feel like it's that crazy that someone like Cooper could find his way into relevancy. I do think there's some upside there, at least someone to keep an eye on. But overall, I think, like you said, Uzma had some really good games last year. Obviously, over the season as a whole, he wasn't someone that you wanted to play, but he had some best ball value. He had some value in certain situations, especially if someone was out or you knew the matchup was favorable or wasn't favorable for someone else on the team, like some of those games where you knew you could pick a T. Higgins, for example. You could also probably pick an Uzma. At the end of the day, I think I'm going to have to go with Hurst. And there's one final situation as a whole that I want to talk about, and it's the New York Jets really as a whole, because I think this entire thing could go a bunch of different ways. So I'm just going to ask, between who do you think leads in targets of these receivers? Because between Moore, Davis, Wilson, and even some of the guys behind them, they gave Berrios a sizable enough contract that he will probably see the field a decent little bit. And then realistically, it wouldn't be that outside of the realms of possibilities that one of these running backs gets a ton of targets either. What do you guys think here about the Jets just as a whole?
I mean, it's wild to me that Elijah Moore is getting drafted so far ahead of Garrett Wilson. I'm taking a look right now. Elijah Moore is getting drafted wide receiver 34, Garrett Wilson wide receiver 52. And I mean, what Elijah Moore did last year was great. And you got to move him up the rankings a little bit because of that production. But, Garrett Wilson is just in every single facet a better prospect. He's bigger, taller, faster. He's got, he's got better draft capital. He just does everything better than Elijah Moore does. So I'm kind of confused by that ranking with him going, almost 5-6 rounds ahead. I've got Garrett Wilson as the primary guy here. But really, I mean, this entire offense is contingent on Zach Wilson taking a step forward. And I do have some faith, or some lack of faith that he can take that step. This team is obviously trying to do what Saleh saw in San Francisco and really build around an offensive line and a run game, and that's why they went out. And even though they already had Michael Carter, they went out and got Breece Hall. But at the end of the day, they've got a lot of talented pass catchers as well, and Zach Wilson needs to be able to facilitate them. So I'm a little bit cooler on the Jets offense as a whole, but I prefer Garrett Wilson straight up to Elijah Moore.
Chris, what's your thought?
Ooh, Adam, your boy.
Yes.
He does. Adam loves Elijah Moore.
I do too. Garrett Wilson is.
No, I don't hate
awesome.
that.
Yeah.
Well, here's where I will hate on it a little bit, because I do think Elijah Moore is not quite as good as Wilson, but I think he's more polished, and I think he understands the playbooks a little better. I think Wilson's a little more of a freestyle guy. I think that's going to get him in trouble a little bit, how much he sees the field as a result of that. Well, I think Elijah Moore can do what he's told to do, and I think that you saw that last year. He's definitely effective when he played. Definitely one of the more productive guys out there. Should play the slot receiver. And my big problem is Berrios. Berrios screws it up for everybody, because Berrios, if he's playing the slot, that just moves everybody out of position, and I don't know how everything gets unthrown. But I think it should be Elijah Moore this year. Now, going forward, I think Wilson definitely will take the mantle moving forward, and it's going to be one hell of a receiver tandem. But this year, I don't trust the coaching staff. You talk about the 49ers kind of copying the 49ers offense. We saw that with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Only one guy can be productive at a time. Rarely both of them productive. I don't see anything different in San Francisco. You also need to be able to block. So that's also where I have a little bit of a problem with either Moore or Wilson, where they can see Davis out there a lot too, because neither one of the guys really block. So I think this offense is an offense I don't want to touch when it comes to the playmakers. I might take a flyer if somebody's like a great value. But yeah, I really, this offense has got so many tantalizing pieces, just not quite yet to know who to grab onto.
Yeah, I really agree with that assessment that it's hard to pick someone just because Zach Wilson to me is like the antithesis of what this offense, like schematically, like they're trying to do. It's like you have this guy who's trying to go down the field and run around and make some plays, and then you have this offense that's containing him into these scripted plays, and I don't know. It's like the offense to me seems built to where it would feed the ball to an Elijah Moore type. But then Zach Wilson and Garrett Wilson feel like they should be a really good mesh. Garrett Wilson can be an outstanding deep threat because of all those things that you said, Dave. He is faster. He is bigger. I mean, Elijah Moore is a small guy. He also, I don't know. As a fit to the players on this team, I would think it would be Wilson. But with what the coaches want to do, I feel like I'm being pushed into Elijah. Yeah, I think that's where I'm going to go. I do love Elijah. I love them both. Garrett Wilson was up there highly for me this year. An interesting situation over in New York that they have going for him.
Free Denzel Mims.
Yeah. Poor Denzel Mims. All right. Dave, what are you up to? What's next in your coming days, weeks, etc.? Are you going to the expo here in a couple weeks?
I am not. No, I was there last year, and I've just got a ton going on with other commitments and traveling, so I won't be able to make it this year. But I also said I wouldn't make it last year, and then booked a trip like 5 days before. so who knows? I'm pretty spontaneous, so we'll see. That being said, I'd highly recommend anybody that's looking to make some connections, do a little bit of networking, should go. It was a ton of fun last year. But yeah, I mean, right now this is busy season, for everybody else. Everyone starts tuning in, the casual consumers a few weeks from now, but they don't realize that now we're the ones grinding, putting content out. So when they plug in a couple of weeks from now, they can have it all ready. So just finished up a Jamar Chase article earlier today. That should be published in a few days now. I'll have a coinciding video with that as well. Just constantly working on my rankings. Right now, what I'm doing are some deep player dives. You already called out the one that I did on Aaron Rodgers. I've done quite a few of those, and those are always fun. When I have a player that I struggle to get a solid take on, I'll just spend 3-5 days just diving really deep into their outlook and write an article on it and help me kind of formulate a take. And that's what I did on Jamar Chase. I didn't really know where I landed on Jamar Chase, if he was overvalued or undervalued. And this is one of those weird articles where I didn't really formulate much of an opinion. By the time I finished writing it, I just said, well, he's exactly where he should be. He should be getting drafted inside the top 5. And that's basically what I can come down to with Jamar Chase. But they're fun articles. So you can find all those at footballguys.com, as well as the 3 shows I host a week. Those are all at youtube.com/footballguys.
Yeah, awesome. Some quality content coming out of the Football Guys camp. So definitely go check that out. Chris, what's the word on the Belly Up MDFF show?
Well, talk about the Fantasy Football Expo that's coming up. We actually have this sponsor of that, or the host, I should say, Bob Long, joining our show this week. And he's going to kind of go on, talk a little about the Expo itself, but also help us cover the NFC West. So we'll take a look at the Arizona, these 49ers guys are talking about, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Rams. So that's going to be this week's show on Thursday night.
Be sure to talk to him about his consistency rankings.
Yes,
those very good stuff.
Yes, Bob has also consistency rankings. Absolutely, got a chance to kind of do a show with him recently. So yeah, we got to hear a little bit more about those. Exciting.
Awesome.
Yes, they are. That's a fantastic piece of content within the community as well. And finally, before we wrap up, I just got to talk about the Belly Up Bowl. It's our 3rd annual. We're hosting it on Sleeper. It's best ball, so that's right up your alley, Dave. We're doing it with Alex's Lemonade Stand. It's our 2nd year with them. We did it with St. Jude's year 1. We've donated around $2,400 so far. Hoping to continue to make that number grow. Do the things that we love doing, which is helping out great causes and playing fantasy football. So definitely recommend joining the Belly Up Bowl. If you go up to bellyupfantasysports.com/bellyupbowl, or it's up in the menu if you go to the Belly Up Fantasy website. So definitely check it out. Super fun time last year. So check that out. Again, thank you all so much. Dave, where can they find you on Twitter? Just
you can find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. That's KLUGE. And just tell everyone to follow me there. That makes it easy. You can see the shows that I'm guesting on. You can see the shows that I'm hosting. You can see my articles. And then I try to tweet out as much content as I can. If I'm ever tweeting consistently about a player, like if I'm tweeting about Jamar Chase for 3 or 4 days, know that a Jamar Chase's article is probably coming.
Yes, definitely one of the bigger must follows on the fantasy football Twitter. So go check them out. I am at LaRue Adam on Twitter as well. Chris, we need to get you on there at some point.
Someday.
It's a hellscape. Don't do it, Chris. It's terrible. It's terrible. Don't do it.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in again, and we will see you in 2 weeks.